Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to my first ever composing and arranging tutorial. Now, does this situation sound familiar? Your choir is bursting at the seams with sopranos and altos, but unfortunately, this is not the case for the guys in your choir. You have maybe a handful that consistently come, and this makes it difficult for you to use SATB hymns with your choir because you just don't have enough male voices. So what do? Well, here's what you do. You arrange these hymns for soprano, alto, baritone, and this allows you to more effectively use the voices that you do have. And when you have parts that match the makeup of your choir, you will get a better overall sound. So in this two-part tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create an SAB arrangement of a hymn. And we're going to use the popular hymn, Praise to the Lord the Almighty. So in part one, I'm going to show you some simple techniques to get you started. So for those of you who haven't arranged for voices before, you'll have a toolkit that will get you off the ground and running. And you're going to find that arranging for voices, it's a rinse and repeat kind of process. It's a process of initially coming up with some parts, then you listen to them, then you improve on them, listen again, and so forth. Now, I do assume that you have a basic understanding of chords and chord progressions. And as always, make sure that the hymn you're arranging is in the public domain, and if it's not, make sure to obtain the proper copyright permissions. And folks, please like, subscribe, and share this video with others if you found it helpful. If there are other tutorials you'd like to see me do, just leave a comment below. Alrighty folks, let's get started. But John, you might ask, how do I get started? Well, I'm going to teach you a simple technique to get you off the ground and running. So here's what I want you to do. First, write out the melody line and write a chord above each note of the melody. And for now, let's just focus on these first 6 measures. Here we go. And now that we have our melody line with chords, I want you to build a triad on each note. And let's keep our triads in closed position. And by that I mean just don't skip any notes of the chord as you build your triad. And allow me to demonstrate. Sweet, we are off to a great start. And look, we already have an SAB arrangement. But we're not done. There are a couple things I want to check. And the first is, are the baritone and alto parts within the appropriate ranges? Let's have a look. Now notice here in the very first measure, the baritones, they're approaching the top of their range. Now, depending on the particular baritone, this may or may not be the case. But let's assume that it is. How can we address this? We can address it by using an extremely simple technique. What we're going to do is simply put all the voices on the melody in this measure. It's so simple, but folks, sometimes you're going to find that, particularly when the melody is skipping around a lot, it can be pretty difficult to create good voice leading for your inner parts. So in those cases, just stick everyone on the melody. And it sounds cool because it adds a lot of drama when the choir is singing along in unison, then all of a sudden they break into beautiful harmonies. So let's use this technique right here. Here we go. Alright, now we've got the baritones in a more moderate range, and I'm not seeing any other issues with range in these first 6 measures. So let's move on to the second thing we're going to check for, and that is issues with the voice leading. Now our goal should be to give our altos and baritones pretty and singable lines. So to that end, let's listen to our baritone part by itself. And I want you to be listening for skips, or places where the baritone line doesn't sound all that smooth and fluid. Here it is. Now that's not too bad, but let's look at a few places where I think we can improve the voice leading just a bit. Right here, and right here, right here, and then finally right here. To smooth out the baritone part in this second measure, let's just change this C to a B flat, like this. Easy, right? Well, remember in the intro, I said that choral arranging is a rinse and repeat kind of process. And by moving that one note in the baritone part, well, now we've created parallel fourths between the altos and baritones. And parallel fourths aren't necessarily a no-no, but in this case, I just don't want them there. So let's make the following change. Okay, parallel fourths, gone. Now notice these latest changes required me to also change the chord progression, and that's perfectly fine. If you can't get the voice leading and sound you want with the chords you're given, change them. Now let's address this skip in the third measure, and there is a very simple solution here. We will just add a passing tone between the A and the F, like this. Now onto the fourth measure, where we are going to alleviate this skip of a fourth by doing the following. Alright, it's time to rinse and repeat, because now we've created parallel fourths between the altos and baritones again. And to address this, I'm going to offset this G here by 1/8 note, like this. And by doing that, we've broken up the parallel fourths here, and we've also created some rhythmic interest in the voices, and that's a good thing. And real quick before we move on, I want to substitute this C7 chord with its relative A minor chord, like this. I just happen to like the sound of the A minor chord right there, and quite often you'll find that you can make this relative major to minor substitution and vice versa. Now finally, let's address this skip in the baritone line. And in doing so, we're also going to touch on another important concept in part writing, which is when the melody is sustaining like it is right here, that's a great opportunity to give the inner voices an interesting and moving line. And that movement will not only create interest, but it will also help to propel the musical line forward. So let's make the following update to our baritone part. And now we've got a nice stepwise moving baritone line. Let's go ahead and update the alto line right here to move in parallel with the baritones, like this. So that wraps up our baritone line. Now let's listen to our alto line by itself. And we'll be listening for awkward skips or places where the voice leading just doesn't sound smooth and fluid. So here is our alto line. I'm noticing some awkward skips in these first two measures, but beyond that, the alto line is nice and singable. So to address these skips, I'm going to change just one note. Let's move the alto C right here down to a G. And problem solved. So I'm going to leave in this skip of a fourth, because it's not necessary or even possible to eliminate every skip in the voice leading, but as long as the part is singable, we're good. Let's give a listen to the alto line with these changes. And folks, we are done with this entire section. Let's give the whole thing a listen. The next 6 measures of the hymn are melodically exactly the same, so we can reuse the parts that we just created, and we're halfway done with our SAB arrangement of Praise to the Lord. In part 2 of this tutorial, I'm going to show you a different approach to creating your parts, and this approach is going to be more focused on the melody as opposed to the chord progressions. So be on the lookout for part 2, which I will post here in the next few days. If you are curious about the music notation software I'm using, it's Finale. And I've been using Finale for over 2 decades now, and it truly is very powerful software. So check out the description below for a link to Finale. And folks, that is a wrap. Thanks so much for listening, and please like, subscribe, and share this video if you found it helpful. And if there are any tutorials you'd like to see me make, just leave a comment below. Have a wonderful day.